the record button. And so today we're going to be talking about gatekeeping in beauty. Happens more than I'd like to see, and it really frustrates me when I see it. With me today, as always, I'm joined with fellow cosmetic chemists, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Lalita, would you like to go first?
Everyone, my name is Lalita Iyer. I'm a scientist, and I'm also a sci-commer on Instagram and go by Skin Chemi.
Perry, would you like to go next?
Sure. I am Perry Romanowski, one of the halves of the Beauty Brains podcast. And I also, we have Instagram, but we're more podcasts. I've been in the cosmetic industry almost 30 years. Wow. Um, and I've been online since, I think, 2006, we started the Beauty Brains. I also have a website called Chemist Corner, teaching people how to formulate.
Esther, would you like to go next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Esther Olu. I'm also a cosmetic scientist amongst everybody here. I've only been online for a little bit over a year now. I also do some SciComm on Instagram at the Melanin Chemist. Nice to see everybody again.
And Gloria and Victoria?
Hi, guys. I'm Victoria.
Oh, and I'm Gloria.
And we're the two chemists behind Chemist Confessions. We're honestly just two friends and two skincare chemists that met at work, working for a giant beauty conglomerate. So skincare is our thing.
So I'll just get started with my first questions, and then when Michelle, I feel like she doesn't have to be introduced. She's so popular among all of, at least people who follow me. So the Psycommer that needs no introduction. She will be joining us hopefully shortly. Perry, you essentially gave me all the questions that I'm going to ask. They were so good, so I'm just gonna ask them. And I think your final question may be a good one to start with. Have you guys ever experienced gatekeeping in your professional career, I guess, or being online?
Yeah, I'll throw it off there first. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of privileged in that it doesn't happen to me that much, especially online. I was one of the early cosmetic chemists online, and so for whatever reason, I just didn't get it a lot. But I will say, in my career, probably the first time that I experienced this was I wrote a blog post about preservatives. Now, there wasn't a lot on cosmetic preservatives when I wrote. It's probably 2008 or something like that, and it was, so it came up high in Google. And one of the industry preservative experts, who I very much respect, he left a comment, and his comment was, "This is terrible. There is just so much wrong here." And that was all he wrote. And now, I thought what I wrote was pretty good, but his criticism wasn't helpful at all. And then, interestingly enough, I was giving a presentation to a big group in California, and the same industry guy, he was kind enough to stand up during the Q&A and then just point out just a few of the things that I got wrong in my presentation. So, we never worked directly together, but we were sort of industry people. And, we're pretty much friends now. So I didn't really let that get to me. And eventually, I must have earned his respect, or at least he decided to shut up. So that's that. But this is the kind of thing that happened to me.
Esther, what about you?
I don't really get like a lot of comments, but there was this one. I don't really consider this gatekeeping, but it was almost like an insult, and I actually corrected them because it actually pissed me off. But there's like a video that I'm pretty sure you guys have seen when it was pretty much like everything is a chemical. It was like pretty much like almost like a meme, and I posted it on Twitter. And for the most part, you can see when people like quote tweet you to respond to like what you post. And someone was pretty much saying that, oh, I'm not a chemist because I should know that when people say when people are talking about chemicals, that they mean they're talking about the toxins in like cosmetics and whatnot. And I was pretty much saying that, not everybody believes that chemicals are everywhere. Some people believe that that natural ingredients don't contain chemicals. So I pretty much had to like correct them and they were saying that I'm not a chemist because I don't know. I didn't know what I was talking about. Essentially, that's like the only interaction I've ever experienced where someone was trying to pretty much invalidate something that I said. But other than that, I don't really experience like a lot of gatekeeping in the industry, or at least not from my work experience or online, compared to other people.
Michelle, welcome to the conversation. This question is, have you experienced gatekeeping in your life as a professional in the industry, I guess, or like online? What are some of the instances that you've personally seen or experienced?
Oh, am I answering?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Hi, sorry. I was trying to log in. I'm just every time I log in, it makes me go through a whole bunch of steps. So yeah, gatekeeping. Quite a few instances, honestly. So there's the instance that I'm like both of us have experienced where there's an older cosmetic chemist who, for some weird reason, he thinks that neither of us should be ever talking about anything unless we've personally like touched it, or worked with it or something, or done the original research, which is just completely bizarre because obviously like most of like we're in the 21st century, like most of science, so much of the fundamentals of science have been explored and we just learn them in school now. We don't have to empirically do everything. Like we don't have to, I don't know, shoot atoms through gold sheets to know that the nucleus exists. So there's that one, which I'm sure you can talk more about. There's one recently which was quite weird, which was where a dermatologist said we shouldn't be talking about the toxicology of ingredients. And then I asked him, but what about toxicologists? And then he went quiet. Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the main ones. I think I got a lot more pushback at the start, but I think now that I've been doing this for a while, it's actually my 10th year this year. I think there's just been a lot more understanding of what we're doing in this sort of space. But yeah, at the start, there was definitely a lot more.
Gloria and Victoria, what about you guys?
I don't think we've experienced a lot of gatekeeping per se. We have a lot more people who try to drag us into fights, like people who will post maybe controversial posts by dermatologists, tag us and be like, "Weigh in, please weigh in, fight!" And that's honestly the extent of it. They know our stance, so they kind of try to pit us against other people. A lot of times, recently, it's been derms opinions that will kind of throw our way, but that's kind of our experience.
Yeah, and I would just add on that sometimes we do, I think, passively get tagged in videos where it might just be about how like cosmetic chemists shouldn't get a say in things, oddly enough, or especially about skin types. And I find that angle very fascinating because in some ways, yes, like agree that, you know, very like chronic skin conditions, we don't have the best of knowledge in that area. But, you know, if you're talking about actual formulas and testing all of them, like I'm surprised that people can be like a little bit more open-minded and like, you know, kind of our industry insights. So that would be probably the only time where I've really felt like, oh, we really are trying to like mark territory here.
We'll try this
Jen,
again.
can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great. I logged out and logged back in. Okay, so I was gonna say before. So when I first made my Instagram, I remember I made a post which I thought was, you know, I did so much research into it. I put hours into, you know, learning about rosacea, the treatments for it, and stuff like that. And I made a post and I thought it was great. But I received like 2 messages from 2 dermatologists about how, you know, I have no right to like make a post about rosacea, and do I even know that rosacea is a medical condition, and that if I don't have a degree in medicine, you know, what am I doing making this post? And funny enough, you know, a couple of months went by and I actually deleted that post. I felt vulnerable and I was just like, you know, starting on my Instagram. I was it was just, I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, maybe, maybe I shouldn't be writing about, medical terminology. I don't know. And then a couple of months went by and I would see dermatologists write the exact same posts. Their posts would be exactly what I had written, like the mechanism, the treatments. And I mean, I'm sure, my information was accurate. So if my information was accurate, then what is the problem? So ever since then, I've just stopped kind of caring, and I still post whatever I want to post as long as I make sure that it's accurate. And I also consult with other dermatologists or scientists before I post to make sure it's accurate. So that was one of my biggest experiences.
And I guess for me, yeah, Michelle and I recently had an older chemist very weirdly target, well, first Michelle and then me, and just made almost all of his posts about us, of why people who don't spend all their time formulating products shouldn't talk about products, which I thought was annoying. And yeah, it kind of, I don't understand that thought process. Yeah. Then when I was first getting started with science communication, I had a older chemist, older than me at least, someone who I felt was my mentor before she started bullying me on social media for something she disagreed with. Something that happened in my comments recently for a post that I put up, estheticians claiming that non-estheticians should have a brand because they don't understand how products should be applied. They were calling out a brand founder on my page, which I obviously felt really uncomfortable with and strongly disagree. And fragrance panel I did with maybe some polarized opinions in there. The people in the comments kept coming in to say that, especially the perfumer Pia, who is probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about fragrance, people were talking about how she has no right to talk about fragrance and its impacts on skin, and only dermatologists should talk about that kind of stuff. So those are just some of my experiences, and I have seen it directed at some of it. I think especially Michelle, for when you put the succinic acid post up. I remember a bunch of journalists and marketers going on about how scientists have no right to talk about marketing. Again, weird.
Yes, I remember that. Super weird, because my PhD is in medicinal chemistry. So if anything, I would be extremely qualified to talk about what counts as a drug.
So the next question, again, thanks to Perry, was why is there gatekeeping anyway, do you think? And since you put together these questions, Perry, do you want to go first?
Well, it looked like Esther had wanted to weigh in on something first. So, Esther, if you had something to say, you can go.
Oh no, I was just chiming in about what Michelle said regarding succinic acid and the marketers and lawyers saying that she had no right to speak about the succinic acid thing. Yeah, that's all.
Gotcha. All right. Well, okay. So on this second idea, I mean, why is there? Because it's pretty common, and I have to admit, I think it's more common against women than it is against men online. I think that's just how it is. But I think at its core, it's probably some sort of insecurity on the part of the expert. And there's also, I think, an element of jealousy. Like the people in industry who have gone through careers and they've done all this work all these years. That's a different skill set than getting online and developing a following. It's just different than doing science. And I think some of the scientists might resent that a bit, that people who haven't gone through the amount of work that they have done in the same kind of way, that builds some resentment. And I think that's at least some elements of why there is this kind of gatekeeping.
Lalita, would you like to? Oh, sorry, Michelle. Michelle, do you want to chime in next?
I think that's definitely a thing. I think it's happened a lot with even I think you're right. It does happen against women a lot of the time. And yeah, you're right. It's a different skill set. It's not even like developing a following per se, but just science communication in general. Because I know there's a lot of this sort of gatekeeping against even really big public science figures like Bill Nye. Who else is there? David Attenborough, Brian
Neil
Cox. Like,
deGrasse Tyson, yeah, these guys,
yeah,
yeah.
all of these like science communicators who aren't even female, and the fact that they haven't, you know, published a million high impact papers. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's part of the whole thing where science communication isn't that recognized as like a skill in its own right. And I think over the last year, especially with the pandemic, we've really seen that it is incredibly important to get this sort of messaging right, like things about masks, things about vaccines. Yeah.
Lolita, would you like to go next?
I definitely agree with what Perry and Michelle have said. I have seen it more towards women, and more so last year compared to for a long time. And I think I don't even know why. I feel like, you know, what do we define as gatekeeping? You know, when I guess someone takes it upon themselves to decide, you know, who or who does not have, you know, access to a certain topic. And I don't know why that, you know, you just see more and more of it every single day. When it's like when we're trying to educate our followers online about clean beauty and why there's no such thing as clean beauty, there seems to be so much pushback. And, you know, brand founders or, you know, clean beauty brand founders, you know, I've seen them comment on my post saying, you know, you have not created a brand, so how are you telling me that there's, you know, no such thing as clean beauty? So I've definitely seen it more so last year, I guess maybe because of the pandemic and, you know, social media. People are staying at home more and browsing on social media. So but I definitely think that it's hurting the skincare community a lot recently.
Gloria and Victoria, what do you think?
I think a lot of it definitely has come with a certain desire to like mark territories. More on the consumer facing side, as traditionally consumers regard dermatologists as the experts in skincare, and now with social media, people like chemists, estheticians have more of a platform, and honestly, it comes from like my expert opinions more expertise than yours, and there's a definitely that kind of vibe. And very unfortunately, I do feel like skin science in general, science communication, because it's not necessarily a united front with very simple messaging, which is fine from a scientific perspective, but it's not as simple as straightforward as clean beauty, something that even though we know is misguided, but if you just have a banner that says toxins bad, it's that much easier to unite people. So it just feels like it's a very uphill battle.
This is not a helpful comment, but it just reminds me of politics. So
Yeah.
very similar behavior.
And finally, Esther.
Honestly, I really think a lot of gatekeeping is a result of like elitism. Like what Gloria was saying about how people see dermatologists as like the ultimate like say so. And I've seen tons. I see it almost every day where it could be someone that's not not a dermatologist or not a doctor commenting on something like science, skin science related or about cosmetics, and there be some consumer saying you're not a dermatologist, you're not a doctor, so I don't have to listen to you, or I don't believe in like what you're saying. And we've all seen, especially like Michelle, you spend so much time debunking a lot of things that dermatologists say, and even Jen and Lalita. So it's like it's almost kind of frustrating that consumers see dermatologists as like the only people that can chime in on things like related to the skin. I'm not saying that they're not qualified, but it's frustrating that people, you know, get PhDs and get a master's and other stuff, in which they're qualified to speak on these things, but only people see dermatologists as like the only people that are truly qualified to talk when they're not. So elitism is like a huge part of it, in my opinion.
Oh
Also-
yeah. Okay. This is like just like something that I've seen from a few people specifically, but I've seen people weigh into like estheticians who post something and that they're like, you have no right to talk about this. You don't, what's your degrees? Like they're not even refuting the content. They're just refuting the character. It's something that really drives me up the wall. The other thing that I've seen quite frequently is this idea that influencers, this is something that also really bothers me. Influencers shouldn't be talking about skincare because they have no direct expertise. Like, if people want to talk about their experience using products, like, why shouldn't they? That's such a elitist way of, I guess, being. I just don't get it, and I think it's better that more people are talking about it, especially people who are willing to like collaborate with the SciCommers, which more and more I find influencers are. But maybe this is more optimistic than the reality. But yeah, my thoughts just to tag on what Esther said.
I can't speak about dermatologists, although I know a lot of people who went to dermatology school and they're not that bright. But there's lots of really great ones. But from a cosmetic chemist standpoint, one of the most difficult parts about being a cosmetic chemist in industry is that you're in an industry that really values marketing and sales over R&D. And often the outward facing part of your company is coming from marketing and sales. And R&D people, they get maybe allowed to speak with the press, but usually it's filtered through marketing and sales. And that actually kind of, I think, builds an internal resentment between R&D and the marketing and the salespeople and the messaging of the brands. And you don't really have a lot of power within a company to complain about anything. But when it's people online and you see who they're marketers or influencers and you don't have the kind of respect for them and they have no power over you, I can see some people in R&D or chemists who have a background in things, they're just going to lash out, unfairly, often unfairly. There's no reason that somebody's background, or I mean, this isn't stuff that people can't look up, research, and learn this stuff. You don't have to be in the lab doing things to learn this stuff. But that's just one of the sources, I think.
Okay, so then the next question. So when, if ever, is gatekeeping appropriate? And maybe Gloria and Victoria, do you want to go first? I know you have to leave in about 4 minutes.
Oh, right.
I would say, I don't know if it's necessary, but at least what we try to do for ourselves is we're very happy to tell people we are not experts over everything in skincare. Like I mentioned before, like when it comes to chronic skin conditions, like we are happy to direct them. Please, this is where like doctor it'd be great. Or,
procedures, go see an esthetician.
exactly, with estheticians, like they work with skin day in, day out. Like there is that expertise that's like they deserve that credit there, So I think like I wouldn't say that gatekeeping is necessary, like outwardly is necessary, but just for us and our ethos and what we believe we can, where we can be helpful in, like we stick to what we know, and I guess we gatekeep ourselves, Gloria?
I think it's almost like a big part of education is like chemists as a relative newcomer to the science communication, more consumer facing side of things. It's also important to say, hey, this is what chemist knows, instead of like partaking in fights with dermatologists about whose expert opinion is more valuable.
Right.
I don't think that's super helpful. It's almost like introducing the chemist side, the chemist angle.
Right.
It can coexist with the derm side. It can coexist with the esthetician side. They're all different angles. The skincare is not a flat one-dimensional equation. And I think the more consumers are aware of these different types of experts, the better we are science communicators going forward.
And I also think it's even the consumer will develop an even more better understanding of skincare and their skin, honestly, and where, who they can go to for help. And even just in the chemist world, like hair care, hair coloring, whole nother beast. And I think there's expertise in each of these departments that they can lend an ear on that we are just not really. I don't even consider us, just we're not the experts that can really speak on that and be helpful in that way.
May
So.
some derms say no sometimes too. That would be great.
That would also be helpful. That would make our lives a lot easier.
Lolita, what do you think?
I definitely agree with Gloria and Victoria on everything that they said. I think all of these areas can coexist. And, I think as long as we're, if I'm unsure about a certain topic, I can definitely, ask another scientist or a dermatologist for an opinion and see what they say. I think, and consumers also would appreciate that I'm able to give an opinion from different angles. So definitely agree with what they said.
Esther, what do you think?
I agree with what everyone said so far. I can't really think of like a reason for there to be gatekeeping in the industry. I mean, I guess, and like in the case, like if you don't know too much about something, maybe it's not the best thing to speak about it. Like for example, like I'm definitely not as educated about like sustainability and like the natural sector, so I'm not going to speak about upcycling and um pretty much like upcycling, renewable energy, conserving and whatnot, because that's not my expertise. So I think allowing other people to speak on it that know more about it is, it helps everybody. Like just letting everything coexist at the same time. It shouldn't be a competition.
So it
I
sounds
think
like, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to build on that. I think that that sense of competition, and not being a competition, that there is room for all science communicators on the internet. There's it's a huge audience there, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to go after to fight among ourselves or to fight with other people coming off as experts when there's still a whole big audience out there for everybody.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like we're all like, I don't know if I would say we're like gatekeeping ourselves, but being aware of the limitations of our knowledge and being aware of where other people have knowledge and allowing other people to have a platform. I don't know, like I don't know if that's gatekeeping though. Uh like for example, I don't think that it's ever helpful to go and chime in on somebody's post who is like Lolita's experience, posting something that's factually accurate, maybe like a little bit out of the cosmetic chemist lane, but still factually accurate. Why prevent someone from speaking on a topic when they're speaking on it accurately? I, I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think? Or maybe I missed a point.
Well, the only thing I will add, like, when is gatekeeping appropriate? I was thinking about this, and I kind of think of this from like a career standpoint. And overall, I don't really think it's appropriate, per se. But sometimes there might be a situation where a person is kind of ignorant of how the situation is. For example, when somebody writes or says something online that might harm their career in the future, maybe you don't like L'Oreal and you're going to bash them. And, it doesn't occur to you that, as a chemist, you might want to get a job with one of those companies in the future. And so maybe, you don't want to, maybe it should be pointed out that you shouldn't, do stuff like that. Also, if you think somebody's online and they're trying to exploit people, it's not exactly gatekeeping. I guess it's more like trying to help out the consumers. But really, I don't think that the way that we're talking about gatekeeping, that kind of behavior where you just are looking to stifle voices and just point out when somebody's wrong and make people feel bad and go away, I don't think that's ever appropriate.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just like add, like it's fine to make a correction on a post if something's incorrect, but do it in a nice way, and then wait till they respond. If it's something egregious and they have a very large platform, maybe respond depending on your platform if that's something that you want to do. But yeah, I don't know if I see like making a correction on something, especially if you're doing it nicely, as gatekeeping. But if somebody's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm Michelle, I'll let you talk. I'll stop talking right now.
I'll save you. I'll save you, Jen. No, I completely agree with what everyone said and what you said, Jen, as well. Yeah, I don't think that counts as gatekeeping. I think if you're correcting someone, that's just a correction. I think gatekeeping is really when people just making that ad hominem argument where you're not qualified to say this, even though what you're saying is correct, which is just complete BS, I think. I think also as experts, we kind of have, or I feel this way anyway. I'm sure some of you are less, maybe a bit less confrontational, although I don't think I'm that confrontational, to be honest. I cry when there's confrontation. But I think we kind of have almost like a responsibility to correct other experts, because I think because of the idea of gatekeeping that does exist and the idea of people's authority, a lot of people are afraid to challenge people who are saying incorrect things if they are experts. So if they're like dermatologists, other cosmetic scientists, estheticians, I think as experts, we can't, well, as people with credentials, I guess, we do kind of have an obligation to highlight when people are kind of using their authoritative voice to promote incorrect information, which happens a lot, as I'm sure everyone on this panel and probably everyone in the audience as well has seen repeatedly. Yeah. So I don't think it's gatekeeping. It's almost like we are inside the perceived gates, and we therefore should use our positions to I don't know, use our influence for good, I guess. I don't know. Someone else save me.
No, I would,
I just
I completely agree with that. And yeah, no, I had something else, but I'll let you guys go.
Oh, we just want to say thanks for having us again. The two of us have to go, but this is very therapeutic listening to everyone's experience. And thanks,
guys,
Jen, for inviting us
joining.
again.
Of course, anytime. Perry, you were saying.
No, I was agreeing with what Michelle says. We do have a responsibility to correct the record, and that's not necessarily gatekeeping. But what I will add is that from the perspective of the person who's getting the criticism, especially if it's somebody with less experience than you, that might come off as feeling like gatekeeping, even if it's not meant that way. So the way to do criticism, and this might lead into our next topic, is I think there are ways to do it in a productive way, and there are ways to do it in an unproductive way.
You know what the next question is, Perry, which is tips for effective criticism. So, how to correct the record without being a jerk. Yeah. Lalita, do you wanna kick this off?
Sure. I mean, I think it's been spoken about before. If it's whether it's trying to correct someone or anything like that, or critique somebody else's work, I would definitely use a friendly approach rather than more of an authoritative. What's that word I'm looking for, Jen? Authoritarian? No, that's not it.
Authoritative?
Authoritative, yes. Sorry. Yeah, like I would not approach anyone with a authoritative approach. I would just be more friendly, or maybe I would DM them personally. I know I've messed up in the past as well. I've had some, I've had scientists reach out to me politely and say, hey, I think, the structure of this is incorrect. And I so appreciate that, because I would probably do the same if I were to spot someone's, something that's inaccurate or something like that.
Esther, what do you think?
This is actually kind of hard for me because I personally don't get like a lot of messages. So I can't really think of like any tips from myself, but I guess just being nice about it. If not, I'm like trying to think right now. I think either kindly commenting, like on somebody's post, or messaging them privately, saying, giving some constructive criticism, or any tips for someone to, better themselves, and not better themselves, but like better how they approach their posts, or any, or what post they decide to make. I think that's the best way to do it. Like we were all talking about earlier, it shouldn't be a competition in this industry. Everybody's here to learn and succeed. So I think the best way to approach is to be kind. And not everybody knows everything. So I think anybody can benefit from somebody that's, like, let's say, been in the industry longer, or has a better understanding of certain topics, showing them their perspective. So kindness goes a long way, in my opinion.
Now, I know for sure Perry disagrees with this, and maybe some other people disagree with this. My strategy for if I am trying to correct something varies. If it's a small account, I would never do any kind of response, but I will comment and I'll try to give them the information. Same with the larger accounts. If there's something like really egregious, usually if it's something minor, whatever, but if it's something really egregious and I think that it would be damaging, I will comment and wait to see what they say. If they do things like this has happened to me quite a few times from people who have like hundreds of thousands of people following them, they'll delete my comment. So I always like screenshot. And if they do that, then I'll share it on my platform to notify people of like, this is wrong and you should report this post. If people make a correction, I actually just recently did this. There was a correction made on a post. There was no correction made after they said, okay, you might be right. But then there are thousands and thousands of people that saw the post. I put up a post, they corrected it, I removed it. Maybe that's not a nice thing to do. I still have a good relationship with this brand after, but I think correcting things, especially publicly, if a correction isn't made to try to get the accurate information out there, especially if it's coming from a very large brand, not if it's coming from a small or very large account, should I say, not if it's coming from a small little account. I think it's important, but maybe you guys, especially Perry, I think for sure you disagree with me.
No, it's not that I disagree with you. I just take a different strategy, and I think there are different ways that people can combat nonsense that we find online. In some ways, it's like trying to sink rubber duckies. So, just put them down, another one pops up there. It's very difficult. Confronting people is not a strategy that I like to follow, because I just don't necessarily see it as productive. And for me, emotionally, it can be very distracting. In fact, I was, just in some stupid Twitter discussion, or in some stupid Reddit discussion about some dumb topic, and it really occupied my mind for at least half the day. I didn't get anything done, so it wasn't very productive. The way that I like to try to give criticism effectively when I see something that I don't agree with is, first I like to ask myself, why am I going to do this? What do I hope to accomplish? Not every mistake on the internet needs to be corrected or necessarily by me, and some things that might seem like mistakes to me, it's just boils down to kind of a difference of some unprovable opinion. So usually when in doubt, I try not to correct people. I'll put what I think is true on my own platform and then hope that, I can amplify my own platform over the noise of what, the people that are passing misinformation can. And then I think the best way to correct somebody, nobody wants, especially on their platform, nobody wants to be told that they're wrong, because, most likely they're just going to kind of dig in and they're going to get defensive and it's not going to be productive. And so if I want to correct somebody, I think it's better to do it in private or just do it on my own platform. Now, if you have a friendly relationship with somebody, you can be a little bit more direct. But even then, people don't like to be criticized in general.
Yeah, so I feel like, I don't know, I kind of take a similar approach to Jen, in that it completely depends on the situation. If it's a small mistake, I will just completely ignore it. If it's something big, then maybe I'll DM them. If it's something big and it's already gone out to thousands of people, then I'll probably publicly comment. And I think a lot of it also depends on what I perceive to be like how receptive that person is to feedback. And I think one thing that I feel like isn't done enough is actually public correction. I think the reason, Perry, that people are so upset about being corrected is that we don't see it being done. So I think like correcting people publicly, kindly correcting people and having these discussions about points of disagreement in public, I think is actually a good thing for us and for science communication and science in general. I think one of the big things about the pandemic that we saw is scientists changing their minds based on new evidence. We saw this happening in real time with things like social distancing, airborne COVID, how effective masks were. And I think people were quite, I think one of the reasons all of this was taken so badly is because people weren't used to seeing this correction process going on. And I think seeing the correction process is actually a good thing. So I've actually had a few instances now, which I actually really appreciate, where people commented on my post saying like, oh, you messed this thing up. And so I now make a point to thank them and then correct myself publicly in a way that hopefully doesn't mess me up in the Instagram algorithm or any other algorithms. Because the Instagram algorithm does actually punish your post if you edit it afterwards. So I try to do it in a way that is public. And so people, I don't know, I try to show people that it's okay to be wrong and it's a good thing to respond to criticism well. I mean, I'm not perfect. Like I do die a little bit inside, mostly because I'm disappointed in myself, to be honest, that I haven't checked this thing out properly. It is always like, I think, a natural thing to be a little bit upset when you get corrected, when you find out you're wrong, whether it's because you're offended or because you are just disappointed in yourself. But I think that's something that we need to practice doing. Yeah, I think that's, yeah. I still try to be kind though. I still try to, not, publicly shame someone who has a small account and it looks like they're really trying. But if it's someone who's just confidently being wrong constantly and they look like they have a really bad attitude to it, and like when people correct them, they're just like, no, I'm right because I have degrees or whatever, then I am not, I'm not going to hold back on, posting their really terrible non-evidence-based recommendations in my stories, and if they have a huge platform. But yeah, it really depends on the situation for me.
I would agree with that approach also. I do suffer a little bit myself from feeling like whenever I communicate online, I have to look out for mansplaining, and it's easy to criticize me in that way because I am sort of I'm the mansplainer type guy, so I fit the mold. But I totally agree with you. If you are going to try to correct people, being friendly is a good way to go. I also try to be indirect. If somebody holds an opinion or makes a statement, I like to ask, what convinced you of that, or where's some study where I could read and that convinced you of that. I think that's better than saying, oh, you're just wrong about this, mainly because maybe I'm going to learn something. Because, as Esther says, you can't learn everything. The other thing you had mentioned is the whole notion of punching up. And I completely agree with it. If you're like a bigger fish, you shouldn't be punching down on these smaller accounts or discouraging people, at least directly. I think it's fair for anybody to go after Gwyneth Paltrow, for example, but that's just another approach.
If anyone in the audience would like to ask a question or make a comment, I'm just going to ask one more question. But if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, raise your hand and then I'll be able to bring you to the stage. So the last question is, do you have any tips to deal with critics? Lalita, would you like to go first?
I mean, I just try not to take it personally. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. And so if I'm being corrected, I'll take a look at whatever I've posted. I'll do my due diligence. Maybe I missed something and, maybe I'll learn something in the process. So I try. I know it's hard. Like Michelle said, when someone corrects you, either you're disappointed in yourself or you feel like, you feel upset, whatever it is. I think at the end of the day, I just try not to take it too seriously or personally and try to stress me out and just try to do better the next time.
Esther, what do you think?
Agree. But Jen and Michelle and Lee to know that like there's just lines for me that I just don't tolerate how people approach others. Like if someone is rude, I will just block them. No responding. I block people so easily. I don't even have to like personally interact with you. If I see you being rude to other people, I will block you. That's my boundary. That's how I set my boundary with people. But if someone is nice saying, hey, I think this is wrong, or I think you could have said it this way, et cetera, I will thank them because like I was saying earlier, not everybody knows everything. And well, for me personally, I'm always here to learn. So if I see something wrong or if I see something that's offensive or could be phrased another way, I'll be grateful because again, I don't know everything. So it's like be willing, be open to constructive, emphasis on constructive criticism. But if someone's being rude about it, it's up to you to decide if you want to continue dealing with it or not. But for me, I don't deal with it. I just like blocking people.
Perry, what do you think?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with the blocking people that really bother you. It's just not worth it. And also you were talking about this a little bit, Jen, but I think people should feel free to delete the comments on their own platforms that bother them. I mean, while the internet might be free speech and all about that, your own platform isn't really required for you to give a space to somebody who's being a jerk for leaving a comment. I kind of look at your platform, your internet space as your house. And if somebody would come into your house and talk to you that way, you wouldn't let them stick around. So I have no problem with that. I'd also say don't engage people who are just trolling. There are a lot of people who just like to troll and tell people they're wrong. But if you can make an argument with somebody and they can either accept that, but or not. But you have to accept that there are some people. It doesn't matter what you show them or how logical you are. You're not gonna convince them. There are just some people, for example, who believe natural things are better than synthetics, and there's no argument that really can affect that, even as frustrating as that is. I also find it to be helpful to kind of dehumanize the comments or that are made on social media platforms or on the blog, and I don't think of the people who are communicating as real people. I think of them as, oh, this is just a computer algorithm that generated this comment. And then in that way, I'm not going to get mad at a computer, an inanimate object. That's just kind of a strategy I use. I know it's a fake strategy and I can't always employ it, but that's kind of the way that I look at that. And I don't know, it makes me feel better. The other thing is, talking to people who you trust, and if somebody's criticizing you and you're not sure, it's helpful to check with other people you trust. But those just are some of the strategies over the years that I've used for dealing with critics. And then also, don't, just at some point, just disengage. It can be unhelpful, and even though that's a little bit unsatisfying.
Maybe I'll just chime in before Michelle, because I feel like I maybe take the opposite approach of you, Esther. I will not block anyone, and I also don't delete comments, because I feel like because I do often get trolls, it makes them feel like they've won. And I don't want to give them that satisfaction. That's my angle. I also kind of, so I guess it depends on what the criticism is. If it's fair criticism, if somebody's making a fair correction for a mistake that I've made, and especially if they're presenting evidence for why I'm incorrect, I'll of course I'll accept their correction, and generally I'll edit and then give them a shout out for correcting me. I am okay to make corrections on my post, and I think it's a good thing, like Michelle was saying, to make a public correction. This is something that I wish more I guess sci-commers on social media would do. If somebody's just trolling me though, I don't respond to them the same way. I treat it kind of like a game. I try to convince everyone else of my point. I may never convince this person, but I would like to convince everyone else, and I will always stay as positive as possible. I will never stoop to anything other than refuting points. While people are calling me names, I will never go there. Usually people would just eventually go away. Eventually I'll stop commenting, but until it's clear that I've made my point, and hopefully my followers will see the information that I'm sharing. With respect to like gatekeeping that I've experienced, so the first time that I experienced it, I was much younger, I think 25 when this happened. I was new to the career and I was really, really upset by it. I remember I almost contemplated just like giving up because of the experience. This was someone that I truly looked up to as a mentor. And so now when this happened, I let him go for a little bit, but then eventually I posted something in my stories that I knew that he would see, and essentially told him to fuck off publicly. So that's how I now will deal with people who are trying to bully me in this way, because it's just not acceptable. And I feel like I've grown thicker skin, and I've gotten better at responding to trolls in my time on social media. That's my approach. Michelle, what do you think?
I take a sort of similar approach to you, Jen. Like, I try not to delete comments. I try to understand where the person's coming from. Sort of like the opposite of Perry. I don't know. I see what you mean by detaching, Perry, and I think I should probably try to do that a bit more as well. But I usually just try to see like where the other person's coming from, why they might be misunderstanding. If they seem like they have good intentions, if they seem like they're willing to listen. And again, if I think it's a common misunderstanding, then I'll try to respond to them and like reply to their arguments or their concerns. I do block people though, but usually it's like if they're being really rude. If they're rude, or if they're just, pestering, or if they're just like trying to incite, like they're trying to start shit. Like if they start tagging other people in my comments and stuff like that. So I won't block people because they criticize me, but I'll block them like if they're legitimate criticisms. But if they're stupid criticisms, like I know, there's a lot of stupid criticisms. If it's one of those, then I'll block them, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of it if they're following me, because then I'm like, you're being a dick. You know, you clearly find my content valuable. You no longer have this, haha. Which I know is really petty, but yeah, it's just if people are being rude and unconstructive.
I will add that my strategy in this regard has changed over my career online. I used to be of the notion that, I never block anybody. I let everything through. But just over the time, for my own mental well-being, I find blocking sometimes very satisfying.
Yeah, I think you have to do it sometimes. Like, I don't think we're like, as humans, we're not evolved to be, talking to this many people online. And yeah, to keep your own sanity, you have to sometimes block people.
I agree. I mean, I don't just block anybody. I mean, sometimes I do, but like some people are just so extremely rude. Like Michelle and Jen specifically, the comments that I see you guys get sometimes on your posts, like, actually surprise me how rude people can be, especially the one Jen always gets a lot of comments about, oh, you must be getting paid by big, like some government agency to be making your post or something. And I just don't understand why people just come off so aggressive and just so rude and nasty. We're all human beings, like, we have feelings. I think some people just don't think that we are not like human. Like, I don't like completely understand. And for me, blocking is like I said earlier, it's really setting a boundary, and then you do not have access to me or access to anything that I say or post anymore. And I just think it's healthy. It helps mentally, in my opinion. So some critique is valid, and some is just way too far, in my opinion. I think blocking is like a good option. Not saying it's the best option, but it's an option out of others.
So we've now been talking for an hour. If anyone has any questions or comments, now is your time to ask. But before we go, do you guys have any final take-homes or messages that you'd like to leave our audience with that maybe we haven't covered? I'll just let you guys talk in whatever order, just in case you don't have a message that you want to leave. You might have said your piece. Maybe all of you do. Anyone?
I
Well,
think
Okay.
okay, cool. I'll go first. I think the only thing I really have on the topic of gatekeeping is just like attack the argument, not the person. Yeah, I think that's really it. If you just attack the person because they don't have credentials, then that's just an ad hominem argument. You're not actually saying they're wrong. You're just saying, they're the wrong person to say it, which I think is just, complete BS. Perry.
I agree with that. And on the other side, if you are going to criticize people, and some things should be criticized, just don't be an asshole. Do it in a nice way.
I guess Esther and Lalita don't have a final comment. I feel like that kind of wrapped it up. Don't attack character. Oh, maybe Esther, do you have something to say?
Sorry, I mean, one of the biggest take homes that Gloria and Victoria mentioned earlier is that every profession can coexist at the same time, that there doesn't need to be any competition or necessarily gatekeeping. That's all.
Oh, actually, yeah, there was something that Gloria and Victoria said that I think was really good, which was it would actually be helpful if experts clarified what their expertise is. Like if people knew like what expertise cosmetic scientists have versus dermatologists versus estheticians, and yeah, they all bring something to the table that's different. And I think it would be good in general for the skincare community to be a bit more clear about what the differences were between the three types of specialities.
Okay, so don't be an asshole when you're correcting content. And also, I feel like I can't say this enough. Maybe not to you guys who are listening, but I see it all the time on social media. Like, if you're gonna correct something, maybe like stick to the points, refute the point, and that should be your focus. I just find a lot of people will talk about ad hominem or professional expertise when that doesn't really matter. So second take home, ad hominem rebuttals are kind of BS, and we're all better together to learn from the different expertises. No one knows everything, so the better way to get better information out there is for us all to work together and I guess respect each other.
I would just say one more
Yeah.
thing, Jen, that when you do receive criticism from people, you don't always know what's going on in their life, and they could just be lashing out at you, and it's nothing personal on you. It's they people could be depressed or their relationships are falling apart, and then they sort of lash out at people. So just consider that when you are on the receiving end. I know it hurts, but that's why I try to dehumanize anyone who's criticizing.
Well, that concludes this week's Cosmetic Chemist dish. If you guys have a topic suggestion for next week, leave it in the webinar chat text channel, and then we will take it up for consideration. I will be publishing this conversation on our YouTube notes channel, which I'll also be publishing in the webinar text channel tomorrow. So if you missed anything, we'll be publishing it there. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks Perry, Esther, Michelle, and Lalita, and of course Gloria and Victoria for joining the conversation.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.